we went from early this morning from billions of years ago in the geology into the Mississippian culture we just discussed. And I'm going to talk about what happened last week on the Uwharrie. So we're going to go from billions to last weekend.
Thank you, Joel. This presentation has had a gestation period of 10 or 12 years. So what we want to talk about a little bit is not site-specific, although we will mention some sites. We want to talk about how 2 agencies or 3 agencies interact to discuss the needs that need to be addressed and how best to do those. So that's what we're going to be talking about. First, I'd like to thank a few of my colleagues, Sam Franklin and Lee Abbott. We've talked a lot about research designs and how we can take archaeological data, archaeological research designs, and put that into a GIS format to sort of make some sense out of it. So we've had a conversation about that, and I appreciate that as well. As you can see here, the Uwharrie National Forest is 51,000 acres. It's got a long prehistoric occupation, Paleo-Indian, right on up to the Mississippian period. And again, one of the difficulties in having an area such as that is how do you manage 51,000 acres when you have so many competing interests?
One thing I want to talk about is when I was hired in 2005, the former archaeologist that was there had left and gone back to South Carolina. They hired me, and I think someone in the background said, like, sucker. At the time, I was in Virginia with Mike Barber on the GWJF. Came down here to work. They flew the job as an archaeologist, but it's actually a cultural resource manager, in my opinion. As you can see, we've talked about these sites earlier. Geoffrey Coe's work, the chronology of the projectile points. We have Revolutionary War sites, Flora McDonald's home site. She just happened to be on the wrong side of the war. She was politely escorted out of the country. We have gold mining sites throughout the Uwharrie. We have the Hardaway Dorship site at our back door, basically a stone's throw away, I hate to say that. And then Town Creek Indian Mound to our south. And we're sitting 52,000 acres right at the heart of all these quarries that we've been talking about. And as an archaeologist, when you're doing survey, most of the time you're digging negative shovel test, correct? Well, in the Uwharrie, most of the time you're digging positive shovel test, which drives you insane. So we'll talk about that as we go along.
As we said, the Uwharrie National Forest provides a variety of outdoor activities that are enjoyed by over 1 million people a year. So those of you that have worked on archaeological sites or maybe even some of your geological survey sites, you like visitors to come, you like them to see what you're doing, but you're always a little worried about them stepping on your blocks, stepping into your unit. So imagine having an archaeological site, which really is the Uwharrie National Forest, and having over 1 million people there a year visiting it. It can be quite the challenge. Some of the activities, you have boating, you have people doing genealogy or cemetery research, you have hiking, you have woods walkers, you have almost everything you can imagine. Plus, again, it's the preservation of the forest and its natural resources, the preservation of the forest and its archaeological resources, and how do you balance that with the public's need and then the greater archaeological need.
And, we've heard this all morning long about the significance of the Uwharries, the rhyolite outcrops, the quarries, the napping clusters on the southern end of the Uwharries. The Hardaway site is located just a stone's throw away, and talks about Daniel. 70% of the early archaic sites, artifacts examined by Daniel from the Hardaway site, were made from the Uwharrie rhyolite, which is sort of, no-brainer because it's directly right there across from the site. We just want to sort of this is sort of a look as to how did we get to this collaboration, all the people that worked before us, including Cooper, but we'll go through here and talk about each one of those.
And this collaboration began many years ago, but it continued this week. In fact, Joel has been on the Croatan National Forest. He is the Uwharrie National Forest zone archaeologist. He's also the Croatan National Forest zone archaeologist. So there's about 3 hours difference depending upon traffic back and forth. So this week he's been down there working on the Croatan, We've been working on finalizing this at night via telephone, via email. And in fact, even yesterday, I think Joel was driving home to Troy. Rodney Snedeker, the forest archaeologist, was taking Joel's phone calls. So it was just relay back and forth trying to get this done. So that is truly what we would call cooperation and collaboration. Just to throw out to the rhyolite, it is everywhere there, as you all know. And one thing they have a problem with is because there's so many hiking trails and so many biking trails and camping trails, the users of the forest are always picking up big chunks of rhyolite, bringing it to the ranger office and saying, what are these and can I keep them? So a great deal of what they do is, educating the public. For instance, Joel and Rodney and Mike Harmon before him, they weren't only just archaeologists, they were cultural resource managers. They're firefighters, they're smoke control people, they're timber people. In fact, a few years back we were at the Wood Run bike route and we became first responders when a biker had an accident and suffered a concussion. So Joel and the forest archaeologists actually wear many, many hats. And it's just not that today they may be doing one task and tomorrow the next. They could have 2 or 3 tasks in one day.
And so we get to the point where we came together. I got there in 2005 and I was overwhelmed. And it got to the point where we need some collaboration. We need a process. We need something that we can go to and all agree upon that this is what we're going to do, because of the number of sites out there. And so they were so overwhelming between Cooper's surface collections to just dots on the map, to where the Forest Service had got into the process of, while they were doing timber sales, they decided, well, hey, it would be a good idea if you find an archaeological site, we'll just avoid it. We won't cut any timber in there. Or if we have a trail, we'll just avoid it. We'll go around it. Well, that does nothing for the archaeological record except create islands of avoidance. So when we got there in 2005, in talking to SHPO representative, we said, okay, enough's enough, Forest Service. We need to stop creating islands. We need to manage these cultural resources. And at first there was some opposition. And yes, I work for the Forest Service, and I represent them. But the opposition was there. Well, we've done this in the past. SHPO's good with it. Let's just leave these islands. And we're like, well, we're getting nothing out of it. So we'll talk about what happened in the collaboration.
And really, to go back a little bit, about 1977, Peter Cooper did one of the first surveys on the UR National Forest. And he looked at about 5,500 acres.
Right.
And you can imagine the amount of data that generated. And so that sort of just sat there, on a low simmer for so long. And it really wasn't until about the early 90s when Randy Daniel and Bob Butler began to look at the URs and look at some of the quarries there, that folks began to reacquaint themselves with the vast database that was there, the number of collections that were available for study, and again, how best to approach something like this. And I made an offhand comment in a meeting with the forest ranger, Deborah, one time, that, if one looked at it carefully enough and parsed a few words, the UR National Forest could become, a National Historic Landmark. And, no, we don't want that. I said, no, that's just tongue-in-cheek. That's just what you're faced with doing. So really, the early work in the 90s, culminating in the publication in 1996 of their work, got people to think, and especially at the Forest Service, like, how do we approach this and how do we go forward from here? This shows just some sites there. This actually is Billy Oliver and Mike Harmon, who was the former archaeologist there. This was at the 1999 Lithics conference.
Correct.
So the early work in the 90s, the publication of Randy and Butler's work in 96, somewhat was an impetus for the first Lithics conference in 1999. And I think that's Harmon with Hardaway Point.
That's correct. It's Harmon, Hardaway Point, and then Moore Mountain State Park. It's over in this area. And the URI portion's over in this area.
So all that led up to sometime in the past, I do the review for the UR National Forest. That's part of my review duties. And so I get out there 2, 3, 4 times a year. I talk to Joel at least twice, 3 times a month, because it's such a large forest and we collaborate so much. And Lee and I were up there, about 2007 or 2008. And we had a big meeting because they often have these dilemmas, where can we put a trail, where can we cut timber, how can we work through here? And instead of falling back to the dogma, we look at creative ways to get through that. And we were thinking, although there was a programmatic agreement that had been in place, I think maybe in the 80s or something, it really wasn't adhered to. It was a document, it was filed away, it was referenced, but that was about as far as it went. So Joel and Lee and myself, I think Rodney was there along with the forest archaeologist, got to thinking, wouldn't it be a good thing if we could take and revisit that programmatic agreement, bring it up to date, and see how we could use that as a document and as a guide to move forward with what the Forest Service needs to do, and how we at the Office of State Archaeology can better help them in undertaking that. So, 2000, go ahead, want me to go back?
So, no, that's fine. So we jumped to 2012. In 2009, we had a program agreement with the SHPO, the Advisory Council. And in 2012, we're making progress towards creating a forest land management plan for the UR National Forest, which is usually good for about 20 years. So with that 2009 document, we came into the forest plan utilizing the public input that was put forward. Now, I want to emphasize the public input is very diverse. You have horseback riders, hikers, OHVers, we're talking big vehicles here, mountain bikers, gold mining, gold panning, and help me out if I can.
We have Bigfoot hunters.
Yeah, we do.
There have been Bigfoot sightings.
On the Uwharrie, so be careful out there. Multiple use and multiple ways of looking at use on the forest. And so with the public input and with our input also, we came up with a forest plan. Now this forest plan is unique in the country in the
right here.
Forest system.
It's a real plan. It is not on a shelf.
Right. And we do pull it out and use it. It emphasizes better managing cultural resources, which is unheard of in most forest plans. Most of the time it's in paragraph 4, page 430. You find a little paragraph about this big. But this one, it's a major emphasis. We have special interest areas on the forest, mostly as quarries and historic sites also, where we've combined the areas of landforms and we manage this cultural resources as special interest areas. Nothing can be done in those areas unless it's emphasizing the cultural resources, which was amazing that everybody was okay with. The public was thrilled to hear that we were going to protect cultural resources on the Uwharries. When you talk to the public, most people in North Carolina have either never heard of the Uwharries or use it extensively. And most people in here know about it because of the geology and the archaeology. But the general public, there's sort of a black and white line. There's no, I've heard of it, I haven't heard of it. And so we moved forward with the forest plan, and this afternoon you're welcome to take a look. Some of it's not very exciting, some of it is.
Yeah, and this forest plan was a couple of years in the making. Again, we talked with hydrologists, with geologists, we talked with trails people, we talked with recreation people, timber people. Everyone that had an interest in the Forest Service with how the UR National Forest was managed had an input in there. And we approached them as, we're not here to be obstructionists, we're here to help you accomplish what you need to accomplish. And we developed this series and sense of cooperation that before long they were actually bringing up ideas that we hadn't gotten to yet. We would have them on our outline and we would be on number 3, thinking to talk about that number 5, and they would bring that up on number 3. So that was very rewarding to see that type of interaction.
Just jumping to examples, after the forest plan was in place, better managing cultural resources. This is an OHV trail on the top, Rocky Mountain Loop Trail. You notice the really good condition it's in. Extensive use, lots of big vehicles riding through. And this is just below one of our major quarries on the Uwharrie.
National Register eligible.
Correct. And so through using our land management plan, we've guide railed, as you can see in the photos, to block access to the site. We have also hardened the surface to stop the erosion effects of the trail. And so our long-term plan is for each one of these sites that are being impacted by these OHV trails and other things that are happening, to go systematically through these and protect them as we come across them. This is just one example.
Like we said, the Uwharries is a playground and it's also a laboratory, and trying to manage the two can be difficult. This is one of the, go ahead, Joanne.
I'm sorry. This is another example. Southeastern, we contracted with them to do the Phase 1 archaeological surface investigation of the quarry site that we just talked about that we were protecting. And their surface collection alone, 7 1x2 meter tests, produced over 900 artifacts. And this is the project area, one of the quarry sites.
And again, the reason that they went with the Phase 1 surface survey, normally in archaeology, for those of you who may not be familiar with that, normally the Phase 1 employs shovel testing, much like Shane talked about earlier. But again, in trying to work with the forest and the forest users and the forest planners, so well, let's do a low impact investigation. Low impact meaning low impact on the resource and low impact on the financial pocketbook of the U.S. Forest Service, just so we could step through this, because if it didn't produce what we knew it was going to produce, we could back out and go somewhere else. And then there would be that much more money and time left in the budget for something more necessary.
And this was a Daniel Butler recorded quarry, by the way. And so this is the site boundaries. It extends further out on the side slopes, but this is the investigation of the surface material. And
you can see by the contours how rugged and rough this area is. In fact, some of these areas you drive to a point and then you hike the rest of the way in with your equipment. Now these OHVs are off-highway vehicles, can get up there and get through them, and so can the hikers and the mountain bikers. But for an archaeologist working up there, it can be very strenuous just to get to the site.
And so here's the different excavations, the surface collections, the 7 units that were placed in. Some of the photographs from those test units.
Yeah, I don't know if you could see very well, but you just see after the leaf litter was brushed off, just the amount, the concentration, the depth of these surface artifacts. It was hard to tell where the surface began and ended.
Yeah, these are not leaves that you're seeing. I know the picture's a little blurry, but those are actually artifacts on the surface.
Just to give you, and that was 2 of them, one more. There's a close-up, and then you could just see, I mean, almost of this, they've been placed in there, but they're that dense in that area. And this is just one of hundreds of sites there. It can be like that. And here's one more, a little bit of close-up.
So with these test units, the 7 that were located, we decided to excavate 4 of those. 2 of them didn't produce a lot of artifacts, probably less than a couple of hundred, but 2 of them produced. The total amount of artifacts is 12,000 in 4 1x2s. So
to a depth of about 50 centimeters. So, as some had thought, it just wasn't the initial land surface. These are packed in there, packed.
And what we noticed, we had a geologist with us while they were excavating, and they noticed with some of the breakage, also the archaeologists were noticing individual lithic episodes where they were producing tools. They were the deposition that they were noticing. So they could see where people were actually sitting, and the napping episodes occurring around them. So that was kind of fascinating to find out that we could actually still see that within a quarry that's so extensive.
And what makes this interagency cooperation so important is that I can sit in my office in Raleigh and tell Joel what I think he needs to do or what he's done right or what he's done wrong. But until you actually get there and you see the difficulty to get to some of these sites, and you see the type of sites they are, the research potential that they have, and the effects that they're undergoing daily, that just gives you a much better appreciation on how to discharge your duties. And like I said, it's 2, 3, 4 times a year that I'm up there, and we're talking at least 2 or 3 times every 2 or 3 weeks. In fact, we've even shared a night in a camping trailer on a project. So we get up there quite a bit because, like I said, it's a playground and it's a laboratory.
We can leave it right there real quick. And with the Forest Service, if they want to do a project, say a trail that's near this area, an existing trail, upper management may not understand. Okay, they say, well, just excavate the site that we're going to go through. And then you tell them, well, we have 12,000 artifacts in 4 1x2s. We don't need 6 billion artifacts from this site or whatever it would be to be in our laboratories, filling up the archives and all that. So it's sort of a balancing act with upper management too, to talk to them about, let's preserve this site until there's better ways to manage it. instead of excavation. The last example is we have Blue Ridge Archaeological Consultants last year. These are some of the Cooper sites originally located in 77. We were able to gather some timber money and actually evaluate the sites that Cooper found back then. And these are the sites that Scott Shumate worked on. We'll show you some of the photographs from those. As you can see, we have multiple Cooper sites. The little dots represent those. And then Shumate was able to, the ones that are more oblong, those are the ones we actually got the site dimensions on. We're able to go out in the field and shovel test, put some test units in, and figure out what size they are instead of just a dot on the map.
And to begin to close up there, again, it's this preservation, protection, research equals a balancing act. I wanted to just re-show this slide here as to what the Forest Service is doing. And oftentimes on these sites, the forest supervisor, who is tasked with maintaining everything from horseback riding trails to making sure that the privies have adequate toilet tissue in them, all these myriads of duties that she has to do, will come in and visit these sites. And we take that opportunity to educate her because she's trained as a biologist or a naturalist. So she has to know about Section 106, Section 110, but to actually have her come out here and see this and see the difficulty and what needs to be done, and hear it from a different perspective. She's got her Forest Service archaeologist, and she's got her Office of State Archaeology, State Historic Preservation archaeologist. So she's getting it from 2 or 3 different avenues, and she can take that and work that through her brain and come up with a plan to actually help this go forward, because this is a work in progress. I think we just had our 5-year anniversary of the programmatic agreement in 2009. And as Joel says, this the forest management plan is about a 20-year document, but if substantial information is gained in between it can be amended. So it's not, you go out there for 2 weeks in the fall and you don't come back for another 2 weeks in the next fall. This is an everyday occurrence with managing this resource and making sure that they discharge their duties internally because they have theirs, and make sure that what they're doing complies with what we need them to do.
Can you jump back just one slide? All right, so for example, there's thousands of master's theses on the UR. You're more than welcome to bring students out. Lipton Laboratory. Some of these photos, this family is helping us find fish weirs on the river. They're not just hanging out on the river. We're actually going through near the town of Lawrenceville in this one. We're documenting a cemetery with volunteers on that one. We're taking folks up to the quarries, educating them about the importance of the quarries, that you shouldn't take those rocks home and with you, that they're important to leave in place. So trying to educate the public on the use of all that while they enjoy the forest, and they'll tell other people while they enjoy the forest. Maybe they see somebody, they're our watchdogs. They're the ones that are helping us educate the public to protect the cultural resources on the URs. So I invite all of you, you have lots of connections, to spread the word that we need help. We need volunteers. We need students. Doors are wide open. Our forest ranger, she's more than happy to have students come aboard and help us out. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions, we'll be happy to try to answer them.
We were going to wear masks, not the rest of it.